And one thing you mentioned too, to kind of segue to the next discussion, is student filmmakers and getting their start in very weird and unique ways.
I loved your suggestion.
Oh man, that's
that
so
was
good to
so
hear.
cool.
Yeah. It's I kind of messed up. I led you a little bit astray. I thought that so for sake of conversation, the movie I recommended Stefan was Operation Avalanche by Matt Johnson, who is a different Matt Johnson than we referenced earlier. Yeah. But he's this Matt Johnson is a Canadian or was a Canadian film student. I messed up and I got the chronology switched in my head. He had a movie that came before this that was his like student film, and then this is what he did with a budget. But it's still like a very tight budget, and with what they were able to pull off is insane.
I was gonna say, like the use of classic cars, classic equipment, like the settings, and then I noticed a couple points where they were using, well, like first of all, I'd recognized the footage. I was like, okay, this is NASA like stock footage,
right?
Okay, because I've like NASA has that free stock footage library.
Yeah.
I went through that a million times, and I saw that clip and I was like, hold on, that's green screened in or something. And he's just like, it looked like so well done. And it was just quick, one or two shots. But like the special effects are really well done. I love the way that they switch from, what is that, 8mm to 16mm,
right? Yeah,
and then it's like in color and widescreen.
And the aspect range,
yeah, like all these little details that just like really fit the time period.
Yeah.
And like the set dressings and everything just like really sold that. So it's amazing what they did like with that tight of a budget too.
Yeah, I think it was like something like maybe a little over $1 million is what they had, which is that's crazy. So, but so I should mention before we go further. So the movie is Operation Avalanche. It's a found footage drama about two young aspiring CIA agents realizing that NASA can't make it to the moon by the end of the 60s, so they come up with a plan to fake the moon landing, and it's basically the process of how they go about doing it, which is like, it's such a weird, like, out of the box concept, but it's done in such a crazy way, and we keep on saying like on such a tight budget, like they had to really get inventive with, like, because I mean obviously like you're like, if you're Ron Howard, you can like rebuild Mission Control on a soundstage, but what they did is they call up NASA and say, hey, we're a bunch of Canadian film students and we're making a documentary about Apollo, can we come down and shoot at NASA for a few days? And then they sneak all this footage in like old Mission Control and like in that side room off, like, so if you ever listen to like the making of like how the movie, how like they barely even had a script. They were just like, okay, we're gonna go to NASA, we're gonna shoot for like a week, and then whatever we get, and we'll make a movie out of that. But so it's like it was so run and gun, and like every single shot was like borrowed, or they had to cheat it in some way, but it goes the other side. You wouldn't even think about it. You would think that everything is so planned out. Like almost every single employee that they talk to at NASA is an employee at NASA working today.
Oh wow!
Yeah. So what they would do is like that guy who like had all the pictures and all that. They went up to him and he's like, "Oh yeah, I was the photographer for a lot of years and I know all this stuff." And they would just cut out anything that like sounded vaguely like it was from modern day.
Yeah.
And if it was like a case where they had to cheat it, they would be like, "Okay, here's some old '60s glasses. Just throw these on really quick, or like put on this button down." Like. That's incredible. Yeah, it just listen to any interview of Matt Johnson and he like talks about like how they like cheated so much of it. Like the bit where they go to 2001 A Space Odyssey, they were shooting there, that was like the actual studio that they shot at. They just got a woman to dress like she's from the 60s or whatever.
Oh my gosh.
And they walked up to the front door, and then the people at the studio was like, hey, what are you guys doing here? Because while they did that, like Avengers 2 was happening inside. Yeah. So then they get chased off and all they get is that one shot. And it's so, oh my god, just listen to anything about the making of Operation Avalanche, and it's insane.
Like it from the storyline and from the way that it's filmed and all that stuff, it seems super planned out. Like when I first was going into it with that idea of like, this is like a student film, I was like, oh my god, like they must have some like dads that have like their granddad's stuff, or like some great classic cars, and then they like crashed one into another, and I was like, hold on.
Exactly. Yeah.
But yeah, like with that budget and everything, like it kind of like makes sense that that's how the movie was done, but I had no idea.
Exactly. Yeah, it's I think that's great that like you don't even question it until I say it. Yeah, because it's like
that's wild.
Your brain just kind of fills in like, oh yeah, they probably just they built like this corner of the set, but like that scene where he's like first pitches like that we can fake the moon land. He's whispering because there was like a tour going on like right outside the room, and he was like he was trying to whisper it so that way they wouldn't overhear. It just makes you like, I don't know, like it makes you like want to go back and like reevaluate like, okay, like why did they do it this way, or like why did why like did they really have a plan when they shot this scene, or like what was their end goal here? But it's he any interview, that's kind of like his style overall though, because like his first student film was very much like kind of the same thing, very it was still found footage but very very different. That it was the first, which I also highly recommend. I think that's also on Amazon Prime, called The Dirties. It's like these two, it's the same two guys. Matt Johnson's the star, he also directed it, the blonde guy with his hair slicked back, and then his like friend with the glasses. It's the two of them again in the first movie, but it's like these two kids who get bullied, and one of them, they make like a movie about them like hunting down the kids who bully them, and then one of them decides to do it for real. And kind of goes crazy, but it's and he also is behind. I don't know if you've heard of it. It's called Nirvana the Band, the show. It's like a show on Vice where it's kind of like,
heard about it. Yeah,
it's like kind of like Flight of the Conchords a little bit, but
yeah,
everything he does is so off the wall. Like it's so interesting to like listen to like how he comes up with his ideas. But I don't know. Like,
he seems like a very interesting like director and producer and all this stuff. Like he seems like someone who takes opportunities as they come, and like, you know, is just gonna go with it, like going to film at NASA for however long, like, and then just like, all right, we're gonna make a film out of this. Like that takes some balls to do that.
It takes balls to call up NASA and be like, hey, can we go to, and then just hope for that entire week that you don't get caught. Like I wouldn't even dream of doing anything like that.
That's wild.
But so so you mentioned the like the kind of like the Forrest Gump effect of like taking this stock footage and like putting the actors and stuff in it. That was that. As much as I love that movie, those are like the points that I really have a problem with it at sometimes. Did that ever bother you, or was it just kind of like, this is just a means to an end kind of?
I feel like it is. It is like the,
because I will say the special effects, I mean they're great in this movie at a lot of points, but it is very lacking compared to your recommendation.
I feel like
whether that be budgetary or not.
And I mean I think it is like the weakest point of the movie, but it's still such a strong movie throughout. Like it carries through that message of like, oh, they're here with them, you know. So it does help to kind of like place them in your mind, like, okay, they're actually there at the time. I feel like the scene out in the where he's saying like, you know, just look busy, like just do work stuff, and then the guy's like, or just, you know, do what you were gonna do anyway. So everyone's like he's trying to direct for a documentary, and it's funny. Like that scene, I feel like could have carried it through. That one sold it a little bit more, but it was also like, okay, I can tell it's a special effect. I mean, I think we're also a little bit biased. Like, I can recognize special effects when they happen.
Right. Yeah.
Like there's what was it? I think the only movie that I've seen really recently that I'm not catching special effects in was The Social Network, and that one has tons of special effects and that blew my mind afterwards. But like there's very few times where I'm like I'll watch a movie and be like, there's no special effects in that. Like I just kind of know that there's going to be something, so I saw that and was like
trained to pick up on it after so many movies.
So I think my brain's a little forgiving in that aspect, but it was it definitely did, like, it took me out of it for a second. I was like, oh, green screen. Okay. But
the two scenes that I was really impressed with, and I guess we can kind of get a little bit into spoilers now. So if you haven't seen Operation Avalanche, you should definitely check it out. It might be on. I think you can rent it on YouTube. I'm pretty sure you can also rent it on Prime. I don't know how did you see it?
I saw it on Tubi, which was actually
free on Tubi, right?
Yeah, it's free on Tubi.
Okay, so free on Tubi. Check it out.
Check
you
it
have
on
no
Tubi.
Excuse not to.
You just got to whitelist it on your ad blocker, and then it's good to go.
But yeah, it's So the two scenes that I really kind of blew my mind, because like I'm watching it, and the one that I always think of, like, when I was like, oh man, that really could have been done better, is when he like walks into mission control and he's like walking past all the people in the tight row, and he's like, oh, your friend just had his baby, and then he runs back out of the room. That's where I think, oh man, that's kind of bad. But the two special effects scenes that blew my mind were the car chase at the very end. Okay. Because apparently that was like 16 different takes, all blended into one, which I like. I kind of, the one thing that bothers me with like movies like 1917 or movies that like try to be like one long continuous take is that you can so very clearly tell where they sneak in the new the new take. They just kind of like put an object right in front of the frame and then plop, make an edit. Yeah. But I think it's very hard to pick up on like where the cuts are in that scene, and it's like so action packed anyway that you don't even think about it.
I didn't realize that like that scene is like it's a single take, like it looks like that, right? I honestly didn't even notice that was other shots, and like I was just saying, I feel like I'm pretty good at picking up on that stuff, and you know, this movie was like the ones that I didn't notice expressly were like they slid right past me just because of like the format of the movie, the way that it's documentary style, and I think like the level at which I had the expectation for the movie too, because it was like, all right, this is the first movie after a student film. Even after I'd gotten that info, I was like, okay, all right, like, wow, yeah, that's wild. That's a sing like that's edited, I guess. Like, right, yeah, that's wild.
And then the other one that blew my mind, because I thought that again, like surface level, I was like, okay, this is just the Forrest Gump effect, but they kind of can cheat it a little bit. Yeah. Is when they go to the set of 2001 and they're talking with Stanley Kubrick. There was no actual footage in that aside from Matt Johnson being on a green screen, because they went to the Kubrick estate and they were like, hey, this is the movie we're making. That was like one of the few times they were honest. They were like, this is the movie we're making. Can we have like any footage of Kubrick behind the scenes at 2001? And they basically were like, no, you can't have anything. So they took these like high-res stock photos, or not stock, like high-res photos of the set, like making of the movie, and they like went in and like almost like Lightroomed, like keyframed every little like arm movement and like every paper flip and like everyone like the movement of someone's lips, and they like took like archive sound of Stanley Kubrick and like put it in to like kind of like fake a conversation with people. Like, jeez, I like, you don't even think about that. Like the only thing that made me realize that is there's one line that he says that I recognized from like the making of the Shining documentary, where he's like talking about lenses and stuff. Yeah, that maybe it's, oh wait a minute, that's not 2001. What did they do? And then I looked up how they did it, and it was like this whole like big like Maya project where like they would take like an image of Kubrick and like put it on like a stick figure and like keyframe each like individual arm to like puppeteer him throughout the scene. And it's just it's just mind blowing.
That's
like,
incredible. Oh my gosh!
It just keeps on going back to that whole point of like the movie you make after your student film is this like such a huge ambitious thing, because like he even says, Matt Johnson in an interview at one point, he's like, we didn't want to go the route of like, oh, Kubrick's in the other room, like, you know what I mean, like you want to like see Kubrick, you want to like see these historical figures, you want to like feel like they're a part of this like nothing should be cheated. And I think that's where it really excels, is that it never really, other than like maybe a few like of those like stock footage scenes, like it never really feels cheated, and that's what I really admire about it.
Yeah, it really felt true to form with like the whole documentary style, the whole found footage style too, and the way that it progresses into that territory of like desperation at the end is like it totally distracts you from anything that's going on the special effects side. Yeah. Or like even the production side. Like you're just so into the storyline at that point that the term that I like to use is suspension of disbelief. Yeah. So it holds you up there. You know, you're not questioning like, oh, is that real? Or like, are those bullets like actually coming through that windshield? Yeah, like it just slides right past.
And talk about masterful storytelling as well, because it's a very it's a typical drama, and like with like little bits of like comedy throughout. But I feel like especially once the plan kicks up, like there's that scene where he's in front of like the board of like directors or whatever at the CIA, and he's like, here's how we're gonna fake the moon landing. From that scene up until the end, it like it slowly gets more and more intense, and it just builds like to that car chase. And like this huge like cacophony of craziness, and it's just so like it almost like horrific in some ways, where it's like you have like the two guys and they're off to the side, and they're like, we're being followed. Like, did you look at our footage? There's like 2 random guys in the background. Who are those people? Is that the KGB coming after us? Is that the CIA? Like, it's so, it builds tension so well.
Yeah.
And it makes you scared in the best way, because like you have the Matt Johnson character who's just like so happy he gets to make his like Moon movie, and the other guy being like, dude, we're being fucking hunted by the CIA. It's so, it builds so perfectly, and the payoff, it like with the other movie, the payoff is so great.
Yeah, and like the characters feel so realistic because they're all like flawed in their own ways.
Mm-hmm.
Like you said, the Matt Johnson's character is just over the moon that he's literally going to be
over the moon.
Yeah, choice of words, I guess. But that he's going to be able to make his movie, like that is kind of his weakness in a way. He's blinded by some things for that, and meanwhile his partner is like kind of blinded by his relationship with his wife at the time. Like, he's more protective of that, so he's trying to pull away constantly. Like, that builds tension in their relationship, and that leaves you like these questions about what's really going on, like with the investigation and all this stuff, like who's really following them,
right,
and who's at fault here. Like it just like they build that tension with these flawed character roles so well that you can't help but believe that they're real, and it adds to that suspension of disbelief.
So I guess last thing we can touch on is the ending. What did you think about that final scene?
Oh jeez, I like there's something like warm and fuzzy about a movie ending with CCR.
Yeah,
like coming up, and you hear that wow, and you're like,
I think it's almost like a cardinal rule where you have to have that if you're making a movie about the 60s.
Yeah, it's got to be in there somewhere, and they used it really well in this context. Like, there's a part of it, I don't know, it makes me want more a little bit. It makes me question what's really going on in this movie. Like, it doesn't leave me unsatisfied in any way. It's just that it leaves me with this sense of like anticipation still, and I'm just like, ooh, jeez.
Exactly, yeah.
Like, it's kind of creepy.
The one thing that I didn't really think of until like this last time that I watched it is I kind of I was looking at it through the perspective of because he calls the director guy, and he's like taunting him like, you can't come after me because I have footage of everything we did, everyone will know. And the director's like, come back and I'll make you your head of your own department, which is like kind of what he's like said that he wants throughout the whole movie. And I thought up until like this past time I watched it that he made this power move of like, you've killed my friend, it's not worth it anymore. And then he sees like the moon footage on the TV, and he's like, well, what have I done? All this was for nothing. And that's kind of the perspective I looked at it up until then. But like with this past time I rewatched it, I kind of looked at it as like, well, is he reconsidering the offer when he's looking at the TV like that? And that kind of, like you said, it makes it like, so it adds that like, no, don't stop right there, you can't end like that. But it's so masterfully, and again, for like someone who didn't have a plan at all when they were making it, it's just it's insane.
And like it kind of plays into that like weakness of his flawed character too, where it's like he's kind of blinded by that ambition, and I feel like it's creeping up on him at the end. Like he's watching that, and he kind of gets a little stuck. He's like, oh,
should I go back?
What did I do?
Look at what I did. Yeah,
I'm almost like waiting for him to like smile at the end. You know, and like it freaks me out. Like, that gets me. It's so
creepy in like a weird way. But it's the anticipation.
It's creepy because I think you're seeing like a good character possibly go bad, but you're not getting any resolution to it. So it makes you think about like, well, what would happen to me in that situation? And I don't know, human nature's freaky, man. Like, people do weird stuff. That's a great movie.
Thank you. I'm glad you enjoyed it.
I really appreciate that you gave me that suggestion.
Yeah, and like I said, if you're interested, I think his actual student film, which they still had a pretty decent, I think they had like $10,000 or something they managed to like scrape up to make it, but like it's not as like off the wall as this one is, but I think it is a very, because from the sound of like the way you talk about it, you kind of valued that whole like character study of like these two guys, and I think that's what the Dirties really has going for it, is like it's a lot about like these two friends who start off really strong, and then one kind of like starts to go downhill. almost the same relationship where Matt Johnson's like, they're both like really good buds, like right at the start of the movie, and Matt Johnson kind of gets like overtaken by his ambition, and the other guy is like trying to pull him back a little bit. It's the same sort of relationship, but it's done in a very different way.
Interesting.
And the payoff is still like, I won't spoil it, but the ending is still like a very similar kind of payoff where it's like, oh no, don't stop there. But
gotcha.
like it's great. And obviously Nirvana, the band, the show, is hilarious. Also, they're like kind of in the same style as their movies, which I think if he continues to like do stuff in this, he's almost like, because one thing that I really, it's like a little detail I really like, but anytime you say found footage, people are instantly like Paranormal Activity, Blair Witch Project, and there are like horror elements to both the Dirties and Operation Avalanche, but it's not really like the forefront. It's like it's like a way, it's showing like there's more to this genre, there's more to this approach to filmmaking, and it's, I think, done very, very well.
Like in Operation Avalanche, it's just sort of like it's just consequential. Like the thriller aspect of it is just like them getting deeper into their job. Like you kind of, I don't know, you almost like expect it to happen because it's like, oh, they're CIA, they're doing an undercover thing, like of course it's going to be tense, like, but then it like boils to this point, you're like, oh geez, like it gets you worked up. And if the Dirties has the same sort of thing, I'm excited to check that out.
The Dirties is a bit more not like horror, but like a bit more in like this really dark place. Like Operation Avalanche, I think, is very like, we are a thriller, and the Dirties is like kind of blurring the line of like drama and like sad character study, and kind of like almost like a Greek tragedy, if we're gonna get like really grandiose with it. It's like, it's the downfall of like a likable person.
Gotcha.
But it's again, I don't want to say any more because I don't want to spoil it, but it is, definitely let me know what you think if you end up checking that one out. That's what got me turned on to Operation Avalanche, is that someone just randomly recommended me the Dirties, and I was like, oh man, I need to see what else this guy's made.
Yeah,